Let's see a guy with some badges, or one badge, a guy with buttons, a guy in a navy shirt, a guy with some eyes and a slack who looks like a general and has a pinter. Yes, this guy is definitely a general. But which one, you ask? Well, today we will be talking about George C. Marshall, dubbed by Winston Churchill himself the organizer of victory. Victory! Let's get started. Hi guys, and welcome to a new episode on today's channel. And today we will be talking about George C. Marshall Jr., but we'll just be calling him George C. Marshall for purposes of, well, more accuracy and more clearness. So let's get started. So this guy is George C. Marshall Jr. Well, let's just see when he was born. He was born on December 31st of 1850. And that kind of reminds me the year of the 1850 Compromise. He was born in Uniontown of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania. So that's kind of nice. And this is a picture of him when he was young. Now let's start talking about his education. His college was called, the place where he went to was called the Virginia Military Institute. And here you go. And during his times in college, he also played football. Well, that's kind of good. His VMI cadets his position was the left tackle, and his career history for college was in VMI of 1900, and his career highlights and awards were just all sovereign in 1900. One surprising fact that I found out about George C. Marshall is that he didn't went to a political party at all. He was neither a Democrat nor was he a Republican. That's kind of weird. From a letter on January 23rd of 1941 to some guy named Charles, he wrote, quote, "As to my political faith, I have never voted. My father was a Democrat. My mother was a Republican, and I am Episcopalian." And by the way, I got this on Wikiquotes, so yay! And so that is exactly how life was like. He was basically good at school, and his dream was to be in the military, which is kind of the opposite of my dream. I want to avoid my military service, so yeah, I just still trying to figure out how to do that. Maybe I'll just go to military and just forget about it. They shortened the Korean necessary military anyway. So yeah, that is kind of the whole point of this. One other thing I would like to talk about here is of a lot of things that could have happened. George C. Marshall was an awesome guy, but I don't think he was that awesome for several reasons. But first of all, let's just go on. His height, for some reason, the Wikipedia said, was 6 feet, 183 centimeters. His wife was originally Lily Carter Coles. They married in 1902, but she died just 25 years later in 1927. So he married again to Catherine Boyce Tupper Brown, when they married in 1930, which is 29 years before he died. Yeah, we'll talk about this later. So this is his military service. Actually, there's another version, but it was so big that I just had to make 2 screenshots. So the military service was that the branch or service, the United States Army, and the years of service were from 1902 to 1959. I mean, it made sense. He was the land army. He became a general eventually. So his rank was the general of the army. Wait a second. And we know that from the symbol here. You see that symbol right over there? Yeah, that's how we know. And so that is the general. He also became the general of the army, the 5-star rank. He became 5-star general of the army, and his commands was the Chief of Staff of the United States Army, the Deputy Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He was also the 5th Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division, Fort Moultrie and District, and the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Fort Scriven and the District F Civilian Conservation Corps, and 8th Infantry Regiment, all having their own special Wikipedia pages. And now, the battles and wars he fought in were in Philippines, the American War, World War I, the Western Front and the News Organive Offensive, and in World War II, the Chinese Civil War, and the Operation Belargar and the Korean War. By the way, the only reason why he fought in the Chinese Civil War because he was a diplomat. He was like the center to try to prevent this from happening, but it looks like that he failed. So yeah, he also fought in the Korean War, and I'm not going to talk much about it. The military awards he got was the Army Distinguished Service Medal. He got 2 of them, and the Silver Star. He also got a Kriegsdienstgewehr and the Complete List. I have actually no idea what those are, but check out their Wikipedia pages. Alright, now let's get into politics. He became the 15th Chief of Staff of the United States Army from September 1st of 1939 all the way to November 18th of 1945 for the whole of World War I, basically. The president that he served were 2 of them, Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman. His deputy was Lawrence D. Kaiser, and before him was Balin Craig, and after him was, you guessed it, World War II hero Dwight D. Eisenhower. Dun-dun-dun. That was Nixon. The United States, he was also the United States Special Envoy to China. He was that for 2 years, from December 20th of 1945, 5 days before Christmas, to January 6th of 1947. The president that he served under was Harry S. Truman, and no one came before him or after him because this was when it was made and destroyed. He was the only United States Special Envoy to China. Also, he became the 50th United States Secretary of State, and he was in office from January 21st of 1947 to January 20th of 1949. And the president that he served under was also Harry S. Truman, and his deputy was Dean Acheson Robert A. Lloyd, and he was preceded by James F. Bryans, and he was also succeeded by Dean Acheson. He also became the 2nd chairman of the American Battle Monument Commission from January of 1949 to October 16th of 1959. He was preceded by John J. Pershing, and he was succeeded by Jacob L. Devers. He was also the 10th president of the American Red Cross. The president that he served under from October 1st, 1949 to December 1st of 1950 was somehow still Harry S. Truman, and he was also preceded by Basil O'Connor. He was succeeded by the 11th president of the American Red Cross, E. Roland Harriman. That's kind of a great job. And then Harry S. Truman finally appointed him on September 21st of 1950 the 3rd United States Secretary of Defense. As I already mentioned, he served under Harry S. Truman, and he also his deputies were 2 of them, Stephen Early and Robert A. Lovett, and he was preceded by Lewis A. Johnson, and he was succeeded by Robert A. Lovett, meaning that his deputy turned into the 3rd United States Secretary of Defense. It would be weird if this guy became president right after that. And now let's talk about what he was most famous for. The Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan is also called the European Recovery, supplied by the United States of America. Now, this was made during the Cold War because they realized, let's look at a map of Europe now. Here is a modern map of Europe, and this is where basically everything seemed to happen. Germany was split, and then it just went all the way down the line. It split the continent in two. These guys over here mainly accepted the Marshall Plan, which these guys called dollar diplomacy. While the Soviet Union were like, heck no, and just told these guys to like, hey, you guys, screw it. Don't not accept the Marshall Plan. Also, two of them tried to accept the Marshall Plan because of pressure from the Soviet Union. They had to scrap it. And there are also other reasons why the Marshall Plan was pretty important. One way, it would make sure that communism would not spread, that it would just be contained, shall we say. It'd be contained into the places where it is already at. And then it will not spread any further to any other places as they were intended. And during a UN session right after this, the Soviet Union actually retaliated with their own plan, which they called the Molotov Plan, which is based on another person, which is based on the person who actually created that plan, which just gave economic aid to these countries, but in return, they had to give up all their businesses so that the Soviet Union would control it. Now, here's the problem here. If the Soviet Union has to maintain its own business and everyone else's business, then it would be like, crazy, and then they like fail. And that was the big failure. Of the Molotov Plan. So yeah, the Marshall Plan was kind of successful. If you look at it now, if you look at how much money was worth then, it would be like almost 10 times or double the amount, or tens of times of worth today of money. And that's a lot. The Americans actually did a good job. And because of this, George C. Marshall was given the Nobel Prize, which is mentioned in the personal details part. After he became a civilian and after he retired, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for these efforts, and he also won the Congressional Gold Medal. He also won the Charlemagne Prize, and he also won the Complete List. I wonder what the Complete List is. I better Google it up later. So that is everything about George C. Marshall. He lived for the rest of his life on town, and then on October 16th of 1959, he died at the age of 78 in the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. His resting place is Arlington National Cemetery. Here, I'll show you a picture of his grave. George Catlett Marshall, the general of the army from 1880 to 1959, and his wife and his mother just went into this grave too. Like, this is a memorial to him and his family. So this is kind of nice to do. And all I'm going to say is, good job, George Marshall. You did a lot. You won the Nobel Prize for doing a peace plan. You may have tried to stop the Chinese Civil War from coming into communism, and you failed, but you still tried an effort. Good job, guys. Good job, George C. Marshall. See you guys in the next episode. Shalom out. Peace. Da-da, da-da.